19届党中全会决议出党的第3个历史决议，极大增强了全党全社会奋进新征程建功。虽然前进道路并不平坦，但以史为鉴。
Radio Romania International. You are listening to our one-hour broadcast in English for listeners in Western Europe and Japan. We can also be heard on the internet at www.rri.ro Channel 1. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter and other social media platforms. Our programs are also available on TuneIn and via satellite Eurosat 16A on 11,512 megahertz, vertical polarization, azimuth 16 degrees east, symbol rate 29,950 mega symbols per second, standard DVB-S2, modulation 8 PSK, audio PID 510. We wish you good reception conditions.
Welcome, I'm Mihaela Ignatescu with the news of the headlines. Prime Minister Nicolae Ciucă has announced that Romanian authorities have spent some 10 million euros on the refugees coming from neighboring Ukraine. And U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken visits the Republic of Moldova on Sunday. On Saturday, Romania's President Klaus Iohannis visited the mobile refugee camp in Siret, Suceava County in the northeast. The total capacity of the camps in the county is 1,977 seats, and there are still 1,400 free places. Some 9,455 Ukrainian citizens have crossed the border with Romania in the last 24 hours. Also on Saturday, Prime Minister Nicolae Ciucă announced that some 10 million euros were spent from the state budget to help the refugees. He also said that next week the Romanian government will send to Brussels all the documents needed to have this spending reimbursed from European funds. U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris will pay a visit to Poland and Romania on March 9th to 11th to convey United States support for the two countries at a time when war is wreaking havoc on Ukraine, the White House has announced. Her visit will demonstrate the strength and unity of the NATO alliance and United States support for NATO's eastern flank allies in the face of Russian aggression. It will also highlight our collective efforts to support the people of Ukraine, reads the statement on the Vice President's travel. Her meetings will also focus on how the United States can further support Ukraine's neighbors as they welcome and care for refugees fleeing violence. Figures provided by the UN High Commissioner for Refugees show that more than 1.2 million people have fled the war in Ukraine, triggered by the invasion of Russian forces. The U.S. Vice President's last international trip was last month to the Munich Security Conference, where she met with U.S. allies and partners, including Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. Authorities of the Ukrainian port city of Mariupol have decided to postpone the evacuation of civilians because they are not safe on the streets. The municipality says that the agreed evacuation route is being bombarded continuously by the Russians. The city council had announced earlier that Russia was not fully complying with the agreed ceasefire, and Ukrainian authorities started looking into reports that Russian troops were actually using the temporary truce to advance into Mariupol. Meanwhile, Russia's defense ministry has said that no one used the two humanitarian corridors set up on Saturday near the cities of Mariupol and Volnovakha, and accused Ukrainian nationalists of preventing the civilians from leaving. Moreover, the ministry has also reported that the Russian troops were attacked after setting up the humanitarian corridors. The President of the Republic of Moldova, Sandu, will meet on Sunday with the Secretary of State of the United States of America, Antony Blinken, Radio Chisinau has announced. Blinken is on a tour of 6 European countries. His visit comes amid the inflow of refugees from Ukraine into Moldova and after the pro-Russian separatist regime in Transnistria again called on Chisinau on Friday to initiate a dialogue on what it calls the final settlement of relations based on the peaceful but neighborly existence of two independent states by signing a comprehensive interstate agreement. Transnistria was de facto out of the control of the central authorities in 1992 after an armed conflict that resulted in hundreds of deaths and was ended by the intervention of Russian troops on the part of the separatists. The request came after the Republic of Moldova decided to apply for accession to the European Union. The separatists claim that the decision of the Chisinau authorities translates into an intention to transfer the sovereignty of the Republic of Moldova to the supranational bodies in Brussels and to let the West use the territory of the Republic of Moldova militarily, politically and economically. American B-52 Strata Fortress bombers flew over Romania and NATO's eastern flank on Friday in exercises with the Romanian and German armies as a sign of unity against the background of the Russian invasion of Ukraine entering the second week. The largest U.S. Air Force strategic bombers took off from RAF Fairport, a Royal British Air Force center, and conducted close air support training and integration missions, according to a statement from the U.S. Air Force in Europe. The B-52 bombers then flew to Romania, where they conducted a close air support training. The overflight across the Romanian airspace brought the bombers closer to the limit of the NATO countries, adjacent to the Ukrainian airspace, where the Russian aviation is trying to establish its air superiority. More than 4,800 new cases of people infected with SARS-CoV-2 were registered in 24 hours in Romania. 82 related deaths have also been reported, 2 of which prior to the record period. On Friday, President Klaus Iohannis announced that the state of alert would not be extended in Romania after March 8th. The president has said that the COVID-19 pandemic is now on an accelerated downward trend and wave 5 is about to end. And that was the news.
Coming up next, the week in review.
Hello and welcome to this review of the main events of the week. I am Tom Kotoyo. The entire world is following with dismay the situation in Ukraine, where Russian troops continue their offensive on several fronts. Large cities in the country, such as Kharkov, Kherson, Mariupol, and several smaller cities, have been attacked and bombed, and the situation on the ground is volatile and confused, depending on the sources. Sirens sounded in several places, while the images televised or distributed on social media show destruction of buildings and other objectives, damaged military materiel, and many dead and wounded citizens. The capital, Kyiv, is under siege by Russian forces. There has been fighting for a week. Explosions sounded constantly, and people have taken refuge in metro stations and other shelters for fear of shelling. An extremely serious incident took place at the Energodar nuclear plant in Zaporozhye, where a fire broke out on Friday after Russian attacks. Ukraine announced that the fire broke out in a 5-story building next to the plant, but that it has been extinguished. The IAEA quoted local nuclear regulatory authorities who said that essential equipment has not been damaged and the level of radiation is unchanged. U.S. President Joe Biden spoke on the phone with his Ukrainian counterpart Volodymyr Zelensky about the situation. The latter accused Moscow of resorting to what he called nuclear terror, and that it wanted to repeat the Chernobyl disaster, according to the AFP. Many experts speaking about this last week conclude that Russian attacks have intensified in spite of 2 rounds of peace talks. An impressive number of Ukrainians, mostly women and children, crowded with the country's western borders, moving into neighboring countries.